and the night her keycard opened my door. I know too much about doors. Not the wooden part, the logic behind them. I'm the guy hotels bring in when their keycards start acting like gossip. I audit the whole system. Readers, encoders who had what when. If a politician wakes up with a story that can't be told and asks for it to be erased, I'm the well-behaved broom. If a rock band throws a TV off a balcony and somehow the TV's access badge shows up in the server logs, I make the impossible sensible. I make the world click and open and close on command. It used to be a clean life. Lines of code, time-stamped logs, cause and effect. Then I married Mara, an arts curator whose job was to make donors fall in love with light. She could walk into a warehouse and turn it into an evening. People left her events believing in themselves. I left them believing in her. For a while that felt like enough. The night everything leaned, I was working a luxury hotel down by the river, a tower of glass that loved its own reflection. Their keycard system had started issuing duplicates, phantom entries that made housekeeping look omnipresent. I sat in the control room behind the front desk, sipping the hotel's idea of espresso and sorting through the ghosts, when a live alert popped into view. Room 2314 opened at 21:32 by card UID 6F2A19. The screen helpfully translated that into a name. Maravas. There are sounds only a trained ear hears. One is your own pulse slowing down like a machine you've just unplugged. I stared at the text. The hotel wasn't ours. The name wasn't one the system should know unless she'd checked in. The screen waited for me to decide whether to be a professional or a person. I told myself what people tell themselves when their lives are smoother than their truths. She's meeting a donor. She's using my staff rate. She needed a quiet room to draft a letter of intent that would pull a sculpture across an ocean. I told myself other things and they were sharp. The control room light did that humming fluorescents do when they think they're the only light left. "Everything good?" the night manager asked, a man with a tie too brave for midnight. "Phantoms," I said, and heard myself avoid my own. Room 2314's door camera showed a hallway, clean and empty. The hotel had a policy against interior mics, which I'd always liked until just then. I could see the door open, a wedge of light, the sway of a coat, not the face. I told my fingers to stop clicking. They obeyed me the way doors do before they learn you. I should have walked away. I should have trusted either her or nothing. Instead, I printed a duplicate key, auditor perks, and rode the elevator up like a man going to meet a version of himself he didn't like. The corridor smelled like lemon and money. I stood outside 2314 and listened. Hotels are great at silence. That's what people buy, a pause in the noise. I heard movement that could have been a person rearranging a room or a person rearranging a life. I raised my hand and knocked. My knuckles did it once as if they'd trained for this privately. The door opened on the chain. Mara's eye, then her cheek, then her breath. She didn't startle, she assessed. "Leo," she said. My name came out like an object she'd put on a shelf and forgotten was heavy. "You here for work?" "Always," I said, and held up the key like an apology I didn't owe. "Your name hit a log." She sighed, not guilty, not innocent, knowledgeable. The chain slid free. She stepped back and the room introduced itself. King bed, river view, 2 glasses with condensation, a suit jacket over a chair that didn't belong to either of us. The bathroom door was closed and the mirror above the desk held us small, side by side, like the punchline of an expensive joke. "I'm not good at this part," she said. "Which part is that?" I asked, and my voice sounded like a hallway. "The part where I tell the truth and it still looks like choreography," she said. "Can you sit? Standing makes it feel like depositions." I didn't sit. I took 3 steps into a life I'd built on predictability and found the edge. Whose jacket? His, she didn't hedge. A conservator. He restores things museums wish didn't break. We've been working late. Then we were late without the work. Here, I asked. It wasn't my best line. Once, she said. Tonight isn't that. Tonight is ending it. He's in the shower because he biked here in the rain and I told him I didn't want his last memory of me to be damp. The bathroom water snapped off. We had a choice, be civilized or be the people we are. The door opened and he appeared with a towel around his hips and apology in his posture. He was the kind of handsome that comes from competence, not cheekbones. He blinked at me, then at her, the triangulation complete. Aris, Mara said, this is Leo, my husband. Aris raised both palms as if entering a church. I'll go, he said. I should have gone before. Stay, I said, surprising myself. If this is the end of something, we should know what it was. Mara sat on the arm of the chair, shot with a light I couldn't tell whether I'd given her or taken away. Aris stood, because only the bold sit in rooms like that. It was awful and strangely tender, the way new and old tried not to humiliate each other. We didn't plan it, Mara said. I know that sounds like a dress rehearsal. It's just the truth. We started with texts about varnish and ended with the part of the neck where skin remembers salt. I had 100 ugly questions and asked a practical one. How long? 7 weeks, she said. 4 meetings, twice here. Once at his studio with a door that doesn't lock. Once in my head while I was talking to you about donor tears. The part of me that could handle anyone's mess but my own noted the precision with which she said it. The part that was just a man tried to find somewhere to put his hands. I leaned on the desk because it felt like a neutral surface. Aris cleared his throat. You deserve anger. I deserve accuracy, I said. Anger is easy, truth is billable. He winced, either at the line or at the way I used my job to keep the roof from caving. She tried to stop, he said. We both did. She belongs to herself. I got that wrong more than once. Mara looked at him with gratitude I recognized and hated. Then she looked at me. I told him tonight I'm choosing the marriage, which is a sentence that feels like it should be carved on something heavy. I folded the duplicate key until it snapped. And me, I asked, do I get to choose? You get to decide whether choosing you is cruel, she said. You get to decide whether you want to build under what's cracked. Aris picked up his jacket. He had the decency to put a shirt on without asking us to look away. I'll go, he said again, softer. I am sorry, not in the cheap way. He left with the lightness of someone who has learned to step off old floors. The door caught, clicked. The room got bigger and smaller at once. We didn't touch. We didn't yell. We did that married thing where you let the quiet tell you if it's going to be a life or a room you pay for by the hour. I sat. She stayed on the chair arm like a person who can't decide which gravity to obey. I followed logs, I said. Not you, it's a bad distinction. It's the only one we'll have to start, she said. What do you want? I surprised us both. To know how we end without turning everything we built into evidence, or how we don't end without pretending nothing happened. That sounds like scaffolding, she said, and I hated that his vocabulary had already learned the shape of our need. We made the ugliest, most hopeful plan 2 people can make. She would talk to the board chair before rumors could. I would tell the hotel manager a version of the truth that preserved their dignity and ours. We would sit with a therapist I'd never believed in, a woman with a calm face, and a room where the air seemed to wait for your better self to arrive. We went home separately. In the elevator, my hands shook for the first time since I was a kid. I wanted to break something, and the only thing near me was me. The city outside was a smear of rain and lights that didn't know how to be anything else. At our apartment door, I hesitated like a thief who'd found the right address. Inside, I did what I hate. I looked for proof. I opened drawers I'd never opened at midnight. I sniffed pillows like a teenage ghost. I watched myself go hunting for a version of the story I could survive and felt disgust and pity in equal measure. I stopped. I turned off the app that turns on my lights and stood in the dark until my heart decided it was still employed. When Mara came in, she didn't try to apologize with her body. She set her keys in the dish and took off her earrings and lined them up like little moons. "Do you want me to sleep on the couch?" she asked. "I want you to sleep," I said, and surprised myself again. "I want us to be able to try this sober." We undressed like people changing costumes, not skin. In bed, she lay on her side facing away. I reached and put my hand on her back at the gentle place and felt her breath catch, then steady under my palm. Contact, not absolution. I fell asleep with my fingers learning again how to trust what they touched. Morning found us as if it hadn't been briefed. She made coffee. I scrubbed a pan that didn't need it. "I told him no more," she said, hands around the mug like a ceremony. "I told him I'm choosing a future where we do narrate our damage like it's identity." "I believe you today," I said. "Tomorrow we'll see. That's not an accusation, it's a schedule." She nodded. "I'll accept that." The therapist's office looked like everyone's idea of second chances. Plants that had survived bad decisions. A rug that invited shoes to pretend they weren't wet. Her name was Vera, and she didn't ask us for a script. She asked for the first time we noticed each other for real. We surprised ourselves with how quickly we remembered. A parking lot where she laughed at my paranoid habit of locking the car twice. A gallery opening where I pretended to hate the canapes because I didn't want her to know I needed to eat. Vera let us build that little memory like a scaffold, and then asked the only question that mattered. "Where did you stop telling the truth first?" Mara said, "When he replaced touch with certainty." I said, "When she started making everything look easy." We both went quiet because that's what accuracy does. We tried the slow things people try when they want to stay. Thursdays became no-plan nights. Phones face down only mattered as much as conversations face up. We said "I want you in daylight" and "I miss you" without coupling it with a negotiation. The erotic came back not as forgiveness but as language, tender and greedy, awkward and precise. We didn't use it to fix anything. We used it to remember why fixing anything mattered. I saw Eris once more outside a museum weeks later. He had a new jacket and a face that had made its peace with the right kind of loss. He nodded at me the way men do when they decide not to be enemies. I nodded back. After, I told Mara because that's what we'd promised. We narrate chance, not just choice. Work changed too. I stopped selling hotels on omniscience. I started selling them on mercy. When a manager asked for alerts that would text him every time a door opened after midnight, I asked who he was hopping to catch and what he'd do with the body after. Some looked at me like I'd gone soft. Some signed bigger contracts because they wanted their buildings to be kinder than their guests. Late one night, the hotel by the river pinged with a genuine glitch. A swarm of phantom entries, the system pretending it had been a party no one invited. I drove down and sat again in the control room. The screens hummed. The elevator sighed. On a whim, I checked the archive. Room 2314, the night we chose scaffolding over spectacle. The log was as plain as I remembered. I didn't print anything. I didn't knock on any doors. I stood up and stretched and watched dawn mistake the river for something fresh. When I got home, Mara was awake, hair a question, eyes an answer. She reached for me. I let her. We kissed in the kitchen like a vow you restate each time because language, like systems, needs maintenance. Trust is not a door you lock and forget. It's a reader that needs calibrating. It wants batteries and updates, and the humility to admit that sometimes a keycard demagnetizes, and you stand in a hallway at 2 in the morning wondering if you've been shut out by fate or friction. What you do next is the marriage. Sometimes I still hear the soft, imagined click of 2314. It doesn't hurt the way it did. It sounds like a hinge that survived. When Mara laughs at something on her phone and flips it face up without meaning to, I feel a little dangerous joy. Not because I caught anything, because we stopped acting like the log is the love. The love is what you do when the log tells you what you didn't want to know. Last week she texted me at noon, "Come to the loading dock." I found her there with 2 coffees and a grin I hadn't seen in months. "We secured the long-term loan," she said, eyes bright. "The sculpture with the impossible seams." "How'd you convince them?" I asked. "I told them repairs are a love story," she said. "They didn't argue." We stood there in our jackets in a gray afternoon and decided again. Then we went home and dimmed the lights we didn't need and used the ones we did. And when our own door clicked behind us, it sounded like what it always should have. Not a verdict, not an alarm. A welcome. A promise that opens. A choice we keep making on purpose.